Right then, news has just broken today that United are set to add another head coach to Erik Ten Hag's backroom staff. Now, it's not a common theme so much in football, but it is a huge trend in a lot of other sports, especially the American sports, and even things like NRL as well, where proven top coaches get brought in as assistants to bring their expertise and certain qualities to the sort of management team. But it does also allow for succession planning and contingency plans, which is what a lot of people are saying is the reason behind Ruud van Nistelrooy's sort of a shock appointment days after he was being touted as the next Burnley manager. Is looking very increasingly likely that he's going to be Erik Ten Hag's assistant. Now, back in April, when the major doubts began to arise with Erik Ten Hag and his future with the club, the Athletic confirmed it was all but decided to part ways with Erik Ten Hag, and the contingencies were still being considered and evaluated. The fact that United, especially, didn't have an Ashworth or a Berrada in the office felt like it was such a big decision to finalize without all of those guys being around. Now, what it does appear, though, is that they began to consider the options of one, keeping Erik Ten Hag, two, replacing Ten Hag, but also the revamping of the entire sort of footballing office. So we've done the front office, which is all of the directors, the likes of Wilcox, the likes of Berrada, Blanc, Brailsford, and Ashworth. All of these guys getting to work when they're allowed to on the various bits of the job that they're allowed to do. Then it's been about, okay, can we improve the people are actually going to be on the grass? Because none of them lot will be on the grass. What can we do on the grass? So at the moment, Erik Ten Hag's team, there'll be a couple of analysts that I'm not aware of, but there is obviously Erik Ten Hag, there's Mitchell van der Gaag, and there is Steve McLaren. So Mitchell van der Gaag looks like he could be on the way out. What does all of this mean for everybody else? I think it's worth looking at. And what is the plan now as we see it unfolding? Now, I think having more coaches allows for a better distribution of duties, allows players with more diverse personalities and voices to interact with, which I think is a very positive thing. The one criticism of Erik Ten Hag that I've heard from players at the club is that he's not the greatest man manager in terms of he's not very warm as a character, and that I took to sort of take as that's kind of where Steve McLaren comes in, because he's kind of known for that a little bit. But I think having multiple characters involved in the management is a good thing anyway, because I think that there's so much room for a personality clash that it shouldn't be a tragedy if this person and this person don't get on. Okay, these two don't get on, but I get on with the other six coaches. It's fine. I'm still happy here. But I think what United could be doing is putting in place a structure underneath the main management that can probably take over, at least in the interim, should the worst happen with Erik Ten Hag. Now, some people may wonder if too many chefs might start to spoil the broth. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think as long as you've got a proper dissection of responsibilities, we've just lost Benny McCarthy. So does that mean that you might see Ruud van Nistelrooy working one-to-one closer with the players, especially on finishing? Yes, I would expect that. Would he maybe come in and be hierarchically above Steve McLaren when it comes to the tactical and decision-making sort of stuff? Yes, possibly. Would that then see Steve McLaren move into that sort of a more administrative assistant? Because there's all sorts of things like Mike Phelan used to organise what was going on in terms of the shoots that the players had to attend. Is that the sort of role that suits a Steve McLaren a little bit better? Maybe a younger, fresher coach is actually going out there and putting the work in on the cones, and we bring somebody else in like that. So I think that's something to consider in terms of how it affects McLaren and Van Nistelrooy going forward. Does it put pressure on Ten Hag to make it feel like he's going to have to be constantly looking over his shoulder? Now, this sort of setup happens all the time. And one of my favourite books is The Barcelona Legacy. Now, if you listen to The Barcelona Legacy or read The Barcelona Legacy, what they're saying in The Barcelona Legacy is particularly Johan Cruyff, particularly Ronald Koeman, particularly Louis van Gaal, these guys, and actually Bobby Robson as well, all sort of had sporting directors and assistants, putting them over and above them, that actually they had personality clashes with, and it completely undermined the manager, and the manager was the one who ended up going. Huge personality clashes at Ajax when Ronald Koeman was there with Louis van Gaal, who decided to start evaluating certain players. And I think there's a story about when Ibrahimovic was there. He was asked to attack the box in a certain way, and it was a way that Ronald Koeman hadn't asked him to attack the box, but it was a way that Louis van Gaal had asked him to attack the box. He does that, and Louis van Gaal, who had taken up, I quote, a pontifical position on the corner of the on the side of the pitch on the halfway line in a patio chair as training's going on, stands up and starts applauding, completely undermining Ronald Koeman and really pissing Ronald Koeman off. And it ultimately disintegrated from there. So Dutch football in particular has got like a real habit of this, and we've just essentially imported a full, I mean, even Steve McLaren for a time is kind of Dutch. But I think all of these have kind of worked together in a broad way somewhere along the line. So it might really work, it might not work. But there's a suggestion that René Hake is actually a Ten Hag suggestion. They've got shared history together. He is also an SEC client, or an SEG client, sorry. And is that the sort of arrangement that you want to see? Is there going to be a 2 head coaches underneath a manager kind of role? Having people, there was talk that United went for Gary O'Neill, which I thought was weird at the time, but maybe the United want a level of higher quality assistant manager than what is traditional. That's what it feels like. They're really pushing for something like that, doesn't it? Now, Romano has got a bit of an exclusive on this. I think he's got someone close to this one, because he said United plan to add go-ahead Eagles manager René Hake to the new coaching staff for next season. Hake and Van Nistelrooy expected to be new additions to Ten Hag's coaching staff, and the club side is confident and ready to get new contracts signed for Ten Hag and the new staff. So now the question remains, who the fuck is René Hake? So in terms of his own career and his profile, in regards to what is a defined style of play, at Go Ahead Eagles, he always wanted to have defensive solidity first and foremost, and he expects all 10 outfield players to be involved and active in defensive phases of play. Hake is kind of known for what's quite a flexible tactical approach, adept at managing teams that like to play possession-based football, as well as those that focus on being a better transition and counter-attacking side. He's frequently compared to Erik Ten Hag, and I don't know if that means that there's something in that, but both managers do have seemingly a similar football vision. Both came through the youth ranks coaching Eredivisie side FC Twente. So Hake appears to have a philosophy that broadly aligns with Erik Ten Hag, whereas Ruud seems to be coming in with his own sort of philosophies, his own ideas on man management, and obviously his own history with Manchester United. So there's obviously going to remain some level of confusion as to how Ineos seem this to work, especially when you have technical directors, whatever it is that Darren Fletcher is doing out there, a manager, a head coach or two, and also an assistant manager in Steve McLaren. It feels like some sort of clarity is required, almost like need them to be getting in pre-season. Right, so here's the diagram of how this shit's going to work. So we've got Ten Hag at the top, not quite, no, because that's going to be Darren Fletcher above him. And that's Darren Fletcher at the top, not quite, no, because he's going to be Jason Wilcox ahead of him. Okay, so Jason Wilcox at the top, no, because Dan Ashworth is going to be at the... Do you know what I mean? I almost need someone to draw us a picture and explain how the fuck this is going to work. In terms of René's coaching career, he's had a lot of managerial experience, a hell of a lot of clubs, and a hell of a lot of experience with the youth. He's had reserve and head coach coaching positions since 2009. He was appointed FC Twente's reserve team. He came in after Cees Lok before he was head coach at FC Emmen. That saw quite a lot of improvement there for him. And he also went 9 games unbeaten following his debut as a manager. And then he took it to a bit of a higher level at Twente. They had a lot of financial problems, but he finished the campaign 13th in the league, which is pretty good for them. And then the subsequent season, he managed to get them up to 7th in the league. So he's done all right there. With Go Ahead, he's been there a couple of years. He did have a 3-year contract, which is obviously coming out of a little bit early. First campaign for them was pretty successful. He had them finishing 11th, which is comfortably clear of the relegation zone, which is what they were expected to be in. But then he improved it to 6th, which is their best Eredivisie campaign since the 70s. Before that, it tailed off, finishing 9th, which is still a bit of an improvement by a couple of places. Hake feels like a man that's at the top of his managerial career so far. So him coming as a third wheel at best assistant, maybe even fourth man in line there, is interesting to see why he's keen to do that. And with Ten Hag close to signing an extension, Jim Ratcliffe and the team bringing in a host of different staff behind the scenes, front of office, back of office. Very interesting to see how all of this plays out and what impact it has on the pitch for Manchester United. Last season, we said they don't look coached. Well, now there's almost one-to-one coaches across the team by the looks of the amount of staff that we're bringing in. So let's see some improvement on the pitch, please. Give me your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Laters.